You had an awesome post, article, piece, thehayride.com yesterday. And to hear the governor tell it, to hear, well, I mean, we are in a state, the state of Louisiana, a budgetary crisis. We are near the precipice. It's all over but the burial. And yet, you had a conversation on the House floor, and we'll start with this, and you can be off and running, with Rebecca G., who's Health and Hospitals. You know who I'm talking about. Tell me what your conversation with her was about.
Well, let me say at the outset here, Robert, I don't want to pick on Secretary Gee. I mean, she's only been at the helm of DHH since January, but I had to use that example because it perfectly illustrates an obvious truth that few at the Capitol are willing to admit, and that is that too many of our precious taxpayer dollars are being wasted by the government, pure and simple. And so I was writing about this example on May 12th. The Secretary of the Department of Health and Hospitals, which is our largest division of state government, by the way.
What's their, like, 4 trillion? What's their annual budget?
$12 billion with a B. $12 billion. Okay. So she's on the floor. We literally have about 12 minutes to question her about a $12 billion annual budget. So, of course, I took the opportunity and I literally turned at random to page 73 of her massive budget document. And I just started asking questions just for example. And so I asked her about a couple of specific line items. And in the course of that conversation, she was forced to admit to, in her words, I'm using her words, not mine, egregious examples of waste and abuse and inefficiency in her department's massive budget. And it was just a real eye-opener for a lot of people. Now, I wish I had had the time to go through every line in that whole long budget, but my Democrat colleagues leapt to their feet and brought motions to limit the time for debate.
I was just going to, pardon me, the Dems on the floor of the House, to put it bluntly, they shut you down.
They literally did. And now this was midway through about an 8 or 9 hour day of going through, every, part of the budget before we were asked to vote on it. The point is that, this is the largest division of state government, and they have millions of dollars. I mean, millions, many millions of dollars in waste and fraud and abuse in the department. And she was forced to admit to it when I asked her about it. And the examples are egregious. But unless anyone thinks that DHH is some sort of anomaly, look at the findings of the Legislative Auditor's Report in January. I mean, that was this document detailed hundreds of millions of dollars in outrageous and inexcusable fraud, waste, and abuse. I mean, across numerous state agencies, Robert, at the Department of Education, Department of Environmental Quality, all the way down to particular school districts.
So why are
colleges.
we still talking about raising taxes? Why are your colleagues? I just don't get it, Mike.
I don't get it either, Aaron. That's the whole point. I mean, anybody that tells you that there are no additional places to cut state government without, by the way, affecting hospitals and higher ed and these essential services, they're either ignorant or they're in willful denial of the plain truth. And that's the only way I can say it. I mean, there are so many places for us to cut government. It is inefficient. It is bloated. And in fact, this quote that keeps floating around that I made yesterday, I said, Louisiana's government has become a bloated, inefficient, and largely ineffective beast that must be tamed and downsized rather than fed. And we're in a serious crisis, as we all know. Our government has grown too large. It's doing too many things, and what it doesn't do well. So the answer is to downsize the size and scope of government, not keep giving it more revenue.
Mike, we had State Rep Alan Seabaugh on last week, and basically what Mr. Allen said was that he didn't see that it was a big problem for every department in state government across the board to self-impose a 3% budget cut. Based on what Secretary Gee told you yesterday and your other work, your other findings, your other investigations, I can't imagine you disagree with that at all.
No, in fact, I'm calling for the same thing. I said in my article yesterday that's gone viral now, if I were the governor right now, I would order every single department head in my cabinet to come into my office, and I would tell them this. I'd say, you have to find at least an additional 3% cut in your administrative costs. I mean, your operational costs. I'm not talking about services to disabled children and all these other essential services. I'm saying cut your administration down. And if any one of those department heads told me they were unwilling to perform that task, I'd replace them
Peace
immediately with
out.
another executive. who
Pardon
does
me,
Thank
Mike.
you.
There is a woman on the far side of the
I've been
gopher-shaped
saying this for
broadcast
3
table
years.
who is waving her arms like a traffic cop in downtown New York City.
It's your job as our state leader, you Mr. Department Head, to manage your budget. Here's where I need you to cut. 3%, 5%. Bring me back your budget. If you don't cut it, I'm going to cut that little bad boy for you.
Hang on just a second, Mike. Tell him the story. We've got 90 seconds.
I told this to Governor John Bel Edwards, and he said, well, we can't do that because there's more important priorities. Blah. Some are more important than others. No, 3% across the board. Gotta go. Sorry.
Tell him your story about over the years.
Oh, he knows this story. I started doing this a long time ago, Mike, and we had one PR person for the state. Each state department had one PR person. Well, now they've each got 7 or 8. And back in the day, they had to type me up a letter or mail it. Now they just whip it out in email form, and you got 8 of those people in each department. It's ridiculous.
It's totally ridiculous. Over the past decade, Louisiana state budget has expanded at almost twice the rate of our state's gross domestic product. And incredibly, instead of reducing spending, we've got state leaders now trying to increase it. The governor is leading that charge. And our budget is billions of dollars higher than it should be for a state with our population. The 2016-2017 budget is over $2 billion larger than the one approved for just last year. We rank 18th highest in per capita expenditures, and now we have the highest sales taxes in the nation. Is it ever enough?
And yet,
at some point, we have to say no.
And yet, the House of Representatives, not you, not Alan, not Ms. Doty, but the governor's $2 billion more this year budget passed the state house 63-38. So somebody had to cross the aisle in a Republican-dominated legislative body.
They did, and I am trying to talk to those colleagues. We're building a coalition of people who are standing against the taxes. There's more of us joining every day because everyone recognizes now average working families are being saddled with these larger and larger tax burdens, and it's not a sustainable model. I mean, we're going to have a decreased standard of living in this state. We got more and more business owners and entrepreneurs who are leaving us reluctantly for friendlier environments in other states. And look, when they go, so do the jobs and the opportunity, the investments, the local philanthropy, the cultural enrichment that all those business owners and entrepreneurs bring to every community. We're in a serious crisis. And, Ronald Reagan used to say, we're in a battle against big government. We are in that battle right now in this state. And if we're going to win the battle, somewhere at some point, we have to say enough is enough. And in Louisiana, I think that time is right now. I just do not think we can afford it.
You sound almost as mad as Alan Seabaugh did the other day. I'm glad to hear it.
That's my buddy and compatriot on the floor of the House, and we're fighting every day. But look, this is the point, Robert and Aaron, please, your listeners know this. They have to let their voices be heard, because if we're going to convince our colleagues to stand with us against further taxes so we don't completely kill the economy of this state, we have to have people weigh in. They've got to talk. They've got to make the phone calls and the emails and text their representatives and their senators and say enough is enough. We can't handle anymore. That's what it's going to take for us to at least win this battle, and then next year we'll try to bring about the necessary reform.